For the Thursday, August 30th, 2018 Board of Education regular meeting for the Lincoln Way Community High School District 210. Please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Platts? Here. Ms. Janice Doyle? Here. Mr. Luchetti?
Here.
Mr. Lulo?
Here.
Mr. Janet?
Here.
Mr. Kostick?
Here.
Mr. Kirky?
Here. Thank you, Linda. Public comment. No one signed up for public comment, so we'll move right on to awards and presentations. Curriculum and instruction update. Amy, there you are. Hi.
Good evening.
Fired it up a little sooner.
We have it on our,
You have it ready to go? Okay, great. Okay, so for tonight's curriculum and instruction update, I'm going to do two things. First, I'd like to kind of do a quick sharing of what is new in curriculum and instruction for the 2018-19 school year, and then do a preview of some of the areas of focus for this year, things that we're going to be working on. So after a year and a half of collaboration and rewriting of curriculum and vision in our social science department, Western Civilization is now world history. Western Civilization Honors is now world history and geography honors, which is the course that is preparing for the very first time our freshmen for an AP exam in May, which is the AP Human Geography. And with 483 students district-wide enrolled in this course, this will be a healthy addition to our AP numbers this spring. In addition, that course required an updated textbook that came this time with online access for all of our students and teachers and resources as well. They're all online as well. In math, we have two new fourth-year math options. First is the course called Introduction to College Math. This is in conjunction with JJC. It's their Math 098. What this means is if a student gets a C or better in this course, they are guaranteed a placement in a 100 level course in math when they're off to college. The other course that is new is calculus. This fulfills the promise that we had that all students can and will reach or can reach a calculus class by their fourth year of math at Lincoln Way. Biology got an updated biology textbook, again with new online access and resources for students and teachers. Reading seminar is now called Freshman Seminar, and while it still maintains the focus on reading and the academic skills necessary for success at Lincoln Way and beyond, it also has, beginning this year and last year, a college and career readiness aspect to it. And for the last week and a half, we've used this course to introduce students to how to navigate Skyward and how to navigate Microsoft Office 365. So in September, we're inviting the reading chairs to come in and kind of give you a full overview of what we've done to fully revise this freshman seminar course. Other new online curricular resources. We have added a program called Math IXL. It's a supplemental math program designed for our algebra and geometry classes. And we've also added Define STEM. It's a project-based learning software program for our science department that's primarily going to be used to do STEM-related activities. If you were to go to our website, the curriculum side of things has all been updated over the summer for the last year and a half. We have worked very hard in our departments to get our curriculum aligned and updated, and now it is fully published on our website. So to give you a quick tour, if you were to go to the academics link off the home page, go to academic departments, click on any department, you are first welcomed by our 3 department chairs across the district. If you were to choose course sequences, this is where you get a graphic and visual representation of the courses that we offer at Lincoln Way over the 4 years. So you can trace the paths from the top to the bottom and decide what paths you want to choose in each department. If you go back to that page and you choose courses, you can then underneath there choose any course that you would like to see more information about. In this case, it's geometry, and then all of the units, all of the curriculum guides for all of the units are there listed. And with one more click, you actually see it completely broken down by standards, math practice standards in this case, unit objectives, and other information. So all of this, all the departments, all of our courses now have all of this posted on our website. And it's a great resource, of course, for parents and students alike. Also new for 2018-19 is a different testing schedule. This fall, on October 10th, we will be testing all our juniors and only our juniors in the PSAT and MSQT, which is the National Merit Qualifying Test. Then come April, all of our juniors will be given an SAT, all of our sophomores a PSAT 10, freshmen a PSAT 9, and all three of those exams are part of the accountability measures from the state of Illinois, and therefore the state will be picking up the tab for all three of those tests, including the college entrance exam, the SAT. So that's kind of different. And of course, if you were to go into any of our buildings, there are already test prep opportunities for these programs as well. This one, including a QR code that you can use to sign up for the practice sessions with. So the two major areas of focus moving forward in this year. The first one we're going to focus on is social emotional learning. Not only is this a focus for the state of Illinois with the standards, but it's also with the rise of stress and anxiety in our students. This is definitely something that we feel pretty good about continuing to move forward with. Just this morning, all of our departments during their delayed starts spent time looking at the social emotional standards and their own curriculum to see where some of these standards already are embedded and what more we could do to align them. Our asset program, our asset directors and coordinators will be presenting their advisory asset presentations based on social emotional learning. And of course, our PPS are just the champions in this area, and they will continue to move forward with programs and programming and curriculum for our students as well. The other major area of focus, college and career readiness. This is yet another state of Illinois initiative. This is something that our report card will eventually have an indicator on. And once the state decides how they're going to measure it. Once again, we're going to look at just how we embed college and career readiness in our curriculum already. We're going to update website with links and other information that students and parents can use to find careers in colleges that pertain to their students' interests based on the courses that they take at Lincoln Way. And then on November 1st, I'm happy to announce we will be hosting our very first career fair. In conjunction with our CTE department, Dan Moore and Ms. Ural are working hard to put together a career fair that will highlight different aspects in trades and careers. Of course, all of these areas will be supported through our professional development between our morning sessions and our lunch and learns. We will support all of these areas as well, of course, continuing to move forward with the Microsoft 365 professional development sessions as well. Any questions?
What was the date on the career fair?
November 1st. It will be here at Lincoln Way Central. I will most definitely be bringing more information about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes from the August 7th, 2018 meeting, approval of the closed meeting minutes of August 2nd, 2018, approval of the payrolls of August 3rd, 2018, and August 20th, 2018, and approval of holding closed session minute summaries from September 21st, 2017 through May 17th, 2018. Does anyone wish to have any of these items pulled and discussed separately? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. All right, next are our action items. First action item is presentation of invoices for August 3rd, 2018 through August 30th, 2018.
Motion to approve the invoice in the amount of $3,663,491.72 dated August 30th, 2018.
And there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Sure, please.
The Skyward renewal for $119,000, is that a one-year renewal or is that multi-year?
1 year, right?
It's 1 year, that's where, I know we need expense. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next action item is the treasurer's report for July 2018. I'd entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented in your package. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Brad?
Yes, all these reports are in your files. The district did recognize $2,491,000 in revenue receipts in July and expended $10,132,000. The actual cash balance at the close of the month was $21,773,000, which includes our remaining 2017 tax anticipation warrants of just over $9 million. The district did for July with a positive fund balance of $12.7 million. As far as cash flow goes, I took a second look at that. Really dealing with the collection of the 2018 taxes we'll expect next spring/summer. So I did take and adjust that down a little bit. You never know how that's going to be, so being a little more conservative. Looks like we could estimate needing about $19.3 million of tax anticipation warrants at most. Revenue is off to a great start, with the exception of tax collection, because we did have such a strong collection in June, and so that's down. And then finally, of course, you know, with the only having no meeting in July, we just had the regular ongoing approval there, so our expenditures were down by about $2 million because of that. But as you noticed, you just approved the list of bills tonight. We're certainly back on track. With that, I'll just answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Brad regarding the treasurer's report?
So just to your comment on the cash flow statement, just a little more color on when you say adjusting down, because it looks to me like the tax collections are about the same. It looks like it's just a timing where you're moving it back in May, correct? So that timing is causing, we were projecting 17 million in tax anticipation warrants last time, and it's now 19.3. Is that, but it's just a timing, it isn't a reduction.
Right, I should state that. It's just the timing of when we expect them to come in. And as you know, May being some of our lowest points, so.
Good clarification. Any other questions of Brad regarding the treasurer's report? If not, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next action item is student activities report for July 2018. I'll entertain a motion to accept the student activities report as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
As you can see in your backup materials, there were only 2 accounts that were in the negative, and both were positive at the date of the memo.
And I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. No, I can't remember the band. Night Ranger concert. This is all taken care of. It's closed out now.
Closed out.
Okay.
Yes, it should be
Okay.
closed out, and it ended in the positive, not as much as it would have.
I understand.
Yes, so closed out.
Just didn't see an ending balance, so I was just assuming.
So where did that money get moved? Because I mean, I see it was to the district performance band.
Yes, it should be moved back. Kelly, help us out.
So we, in July, reimbursed the marching band account for the $67,000 and change, I believe it was, that they deposited into the concert account in order to cover the charges or the expenses. And then the remaining proceeds after all of the bills were paid was transferred into the Rose Bowl fundraising account. And I believe that amounted to about $3,800.
Any other questions regarding student activity? Now we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next action item are personnel reports. Employment. Rob?
All right, under employment, Steve Borcher, Key Club sponsor, Tammy Bosco, paraprofessional, Eric Byer, bus driver, Michelle Cerny, paraprofessional, Emmanuel Crockett, bus driver, Tina Finch, bus driver, Lisa Futterer, paraprofessional, Carol Garcia, secretary, Heather Grenzick, secretary, Dennis Harper, bus driver, Robert Hubbard, paraprofessional, Kyle Langendorfer, paraprofessional, James Loftus, paraprofessional, Paulo Lopez, food service, Dennis Myrochinsky, bus driver, Trey Murray, paraprofessional, Kristen Newberg, scholastic bowl coach, Evan Panfield, paraprofessional, Dan Pattison, paraprofessional, Melinda Ruiz, world language teacher, Patrick Spreadberry, speech team coach, and Megan Stark, paraprofessional. I ask the board to approve the employment report as presented.
Entertain a motion to approve the employment report as presented by Rob.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second? Any questions or discussion?
Just a question on staffing. We always see, this time of year, see a ton of moving paraprofessionals and the bus drivers. I mean, are we fully staffed at this point?
We're still looking for a few more people to fill spots. You know, transportation, we can always use more help. Than paraprofessionals, we had a few that started with us, and prior to bringing them to the board, they had moved on to other positions, so we're looking to fill those. I know Mrs. Erlenbaugh's already got some interviews set up to fill those spots, so we're always
And
working.
a number of these are recent college grads that are still looking. In fact, like two of the gentlemen on the list right now, one's still trying to make an NFL football team, and another's looking to work in law enforcement, so we'll keep them as long as we can.
It's typical.
Yeah.
TAs, paraprofessionals come, get jobs, leave, come, get jobs, leave, it's all. People looking to get into the field.
Any other questions, Rob? Do we have a motion in a second?
Yes.
Call for a vote.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Rob, next.
Under retirements, Frank Cogswell is requesting to retire on August, bus driver is requesting to retire on August 20th, 2018. Nancy Lindsay, bus driver, is requesting to retire on August 21st, 2018. Gloria Nyman, bus driver, is requesting to retire on September 28th, 2018. And Donna Thompson, PE teacher in Lincoln Way West, is requesting to retire May 24th of 2019. As the board to approve these retirements as presented.
Entertain a motion to approve the retirements as presented.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussions or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote, please.
Vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Next, Rob.
Resignations, Nancy Burke, paraprofessional, Christy Danielitz, paraprofessional, Laura Ford, bus driver, Jody Garg, paraprofessional, Kim Kremel, paraprofessional, Alex Mackin, custodian, Matt Murphy, paraprofessional, Thomas Ritchie, maintenance, Kim Vincent, bus driver, and Ben Zabricki, paraprofessional. I ask the board to approve these resignations as presented.
Entertain a motion to approve the resignations as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions or discussion regarding the resignations? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Next on the agenda, the second reading of policy 120. It includes the org chart.
Org chart.
I guess I'll jump in on the org chart. Just, I'd like to add off of the Board of Education, the audit and the Inspector General.
Independent Inspector General.
Those would be the two that I think should be listed there. Just otherwise, this really screams that the board is only receiving information directly from the superintendent, and we have specifically set up that Inspector General as an option, And obviously, the audit is something that's done annually, so I think that should be added. It'd be directly to the board, right to the Board of Education level.
Reporting to, just underneath the board. Yeah, so it'd be just underneath the board, and we would go independent inspector general and then the annual audit.
It more accurately depicts what we've set up, and it obviously shows the governance that exists with that as well. So that would just be my suggestion.
Makes sense.
With that, I'd entertain a motion to accept that as with the proposed adjustments.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any additional discussion or comment?
Is this on the org and the policy, 120?
Yes, this is part of the policy.
I just have one question then. On the policy, it says that the district partners in the following joint projects and follow agreements. It says, and there's nothing below it. There's nothing, at least for me, there was nothing attached or anything.
This is the way it's written in press.
Okay. Because it's got a colon, and then there's nothing
Yeah.
underneath it, so.
Oh,
yeah.
because we removed it.
So is there none at this, would it be none at this time, or should we be listing the joint
I'm
agreement?
sorry, if we go to the last meeting, you would be able to see it. It's my fault.
Okay.
taking
Okay,
So
there
this-
should be something
it out.
underneath.
It still is there, yes, and if
Okay.
you went to our library right now.
It
So
lists the various
the
types of.
library and the-
Yes.
Okay.
So this is, that will remain unchanged. The only change is an update of the org chart. Yes.
Which the change is basically, with 10 leaving, you have more direct reports than.
Correct.
Yes.
Direct assistant.
Right. And so Joe, you're suggesting putting the audit to the Board of Education?
Correct. And the
I
inspector.
Don't
Which it
disagree,
does.
but if they have questions, do they go straight to the Board of Education because they report to us, or do they go to Brad?
Well,
They're gonna act on our.
Actually, we're going to get a budget, or we're going to get an audit update from Kelly this evening, but the management letter and the audit goes to the board.
Agree.
Yes.
Okay.
The
All
board,
right, I just wanted.
the board selects the
you know, kind of
auditor.
like-
I mean, they're going to work with staff to
Understood.
conduct the
That's what I
audit.
want to clear, I just want to state that clearly.
Right.
Okay.
Their reporting functions to the board,
To the
so
board.
that would be the correct way to report.
Okay.
No, those are
I'm
good
good.
questions.
I'm good.
So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Good question. If not, call for a vote, please.
Vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next, working cash fund loan to education fund. So I'd entertain a motion to accept the resolution as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion or questions? Brad?
I'd just like to let you know, these are included in the working cash flow, and we will be doing several transfers this year as we're working to really minimize the amount of TAWs and the timing of the TAWs that would be needed. So this is the first transfer to move that from working cash to the education fund.
This is really something we're doing annually.
Right. Right. This one is very typical.
Yeah.
Now, there'll be some others where we'll move between, and those will be more keeping that down as much as possible. The TAW.
So this is something we've had planned, we've known about, it's not, we need a loan all of a sudden, people your loan.
And it's also been included in the budget, so it's also out there.
Any other questions? If not, I'll open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Next action item is Lincoln Way West copier purchase. I'd entertain a motion to accept the Lincoln Way West photocopier purchase as recommended in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion or questions?
All right, I appreciate the board entertaining to move ahead with these 2 copiers. So we're completely, at the end of this fiscal year, we'll be completely off lease with all copiers. So we'll be doing a district-wide bid in the spring. And we thought we could get these 2 machines to last until then, but we've just had so many repairs needed on these machines that it just came to the point where it was no longer feasible. They did major repairs in last year and needed repairs again this year. And so when you're about to spend 25% of the cost of new ones, it just doesn't make sense. They're well beyond their useful life. No matter where we kind of end up next spring, we'll be able to mold these into it. Given the lease rates, we are recommending just to do a direct purchase on these so that we're free and clear of any leases come next spring.
So I have a few questions. Just the first on these lease rates, what were they before that you found them more attractive? I mean, these seem awfully high to me.
Well, I thought all of the, quite honestly, most of the lease rates I thought were pretty darn high.
That have been used historically.
Historically?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have to go back and look to see what we have received in the past. I don't know that, but as I began this, I started out and got a quote from one vendor and started looking at it, and I'm like, oh gosh, I just think we can do better than this. So then I just kept pushing and finally ended up going full board and getting quotes all the way across the board. And, you can see from the lease rates, I think they're, rather high.
Does the purchase include the service contract, or is that additional?
There's an additional, we did take quotes on it at the same time that we did it. Their lease rate is 0.3 cents for black and white, and that's what these 2 machines will do, just only black and white. So very competitive though, we did quotes on that too.
That's service. It's not lease.
Or service, yeah, service, sorry. Yeah, I guess they are listed there, service down at the bottom, so
Well,
it's right at what, 29.5.
And you're paying that service rate regardless if you're leasing or buying?
Right,
That's
exactly.
Okay.
And that covers everything but paper. So that covers toner, fusers, anything. And so, these machines run about 300,000 copies a month. So, a month.
Oh.
Yeah, we're talking 6 million copies over, I mean, they have their peaks and valleys, but yeah, these machines are cranking out,
Have we used Xerox before?
We've not used Xerox, but of course, we've used Proven for some time in the other 2 buildings and have been pleased with them. I quizzed them, we demoed them, and they feel very comfortable that these machines will fit our needs. Service is great.
The buildings feel like their response time is good?
Yeah.
We've had a few in my district that were
Right.
response time, machines were down for days before
Oh,
someone was
no,
able
no,
to
no.
come out, things like that.
Right. Proven's right here in
Yeah,
Tinsley
that's-
Park,
that's
and they're great to work with.
Okay.
They were the low bid. Just curious why we didn't, since they were the second most, 2, why didn't you meet with Conica?
Well, I met with all the vendors I met with. We didn't demo their product just because, I just felt like just looking at the lowest 2 was fine. So at that point, we just went ahead and moved ahead with the Proven.
So then next year we'll be doing the same thing for,
Well, next year we'll do a district-wide bid for all copiers. We'll be 100% off lease, and our machines are getting, some of them are really getting worn. So we'll do a district-wide evaluation and study, and so we'll be coming back in the spring with a recommendation for a district-wide leasing. We won't have the capital to make that kind of a purchase, but we'd be going to the district-wide leasing. And I didn't want to be tied onto one lease and then have something else district-wide. This way, these 2 machines can kind of be independent and probably most likely be able to negotiate to roll them into whatever, or we'll figure out whatever's the best option.
How many copiers are we talking about?
2.
No.
Oh, district-wide?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. About 14-ish in each building, so.
So,
Not all of them are the high capacity ones though, right?
Oh, no, we
Yeah, I was
have-
gonna say, the high capacity, like 2 of those.
Right, we have 2 high capacity at each building, and then besides that, there's around 12 that are spread throughout the building. And they can range from, pretty minor ones to, medium.
Any other questions?
Are these, really quick question actually, are the teacher laptops hooked up to the copiers and not printers anymore? Like, are we
Right,
starting
so-
to phase out printers? Because that's
Right.
cheaper to have the laptops connect to a copy machine.
Absolutely. So in West and Central, we have, all across those buildings, we have what's called secure print. And so
Yeah.
you can print from anywhere in the district. Now, for whatever reason, West, we hadn't accomplished that year there yet, but these both are networked.
Yes.
And you can still print to them, you just can't secure print. When you hit print, it
Because you
just
can't
goes.
release it from your own sign-in, it just
Right.
goes to it.
You just select it like you
Yeah.
would a printer.
Okay.
But it's definitely cheaper,
Yeah,
And that will
we've
be
gotten rid of
something we'll
almost
be
all
doing
printers,
district-wide in the
just the
future, is
charge.
that process.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any additional questions? Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Next action item is the Lincoln Way Marching Band equipment purchase, and entertain a motion to accept the recommendation as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Costick. Questions regarding the marching band instrument purchase?
Right, the first thing I'd just like to point out, even though we have one price here from a vendor, we did get other pricing, we did list that out. Consolmers is really a quasi-manufacturer, so we're really buying direct from the distributor. So when we did check other prices, they're like, well, the price you're getting is our cost, and we can't even compete with that. So this is for the replacement of 3, I believe, 3 Suzy phones, and would be getting right from the distributor.
Any questions of Brad regarding this? None? We go ahead.
Well, I mean, did we develop kind of a plan on how we're going to be buying? I mean, we've talked about it now in a couple of pieces. I mean, do we have a, kind of a layout of a plan for what needs to be replaced and when we're going to build it in the budget, et cetera, longer term?
Exactly, and I apologize for not bringing that up. So as part of the October standard capital improvement plan, we will be discussing the 5-year plan for equipment replacement as it relates to the music departments. And that will be starting for budget year 20.
They've submitted a draft request, and we're meeting with them here in the next week to go through and
To kind of refine it down.
refine it a little bit.
This expense is in this year's budget?
This is for 19, yes.
Okay.
Is there, I can't remember when it was, but we approved something already. Was that
Drums
in,
or something.
was
Right.
that in 18?
That was for
That's last
18.
year, yeah.
So are we expecting to do more in 19? Or what do we put in the budget so far? Just
This is what my understanding, talking about them, this is what we needed for 19. They provided me with a 5-year plan, and we're in the process of refining. We're meeting again next week, and we'll have that ready for our October meeting.
Any other questions? Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Next is the tax levy determination.
me. Oh, thank you, Amy. All righty. Tonight, we're here to begin the process of preparing to adopt the 2018 tax levy by first determining the amount of taxes necessary to support the tentative fiscal year 2019 budget. Key points for tonight's presentation are that the 2018 tax rate is estimated to decline slightly. This is due to the fact that existing taxpayers' property values are rising faster than the overall tax levy, including debt service. New construction for budgeting purposes is estimated at $50 million, but for the tax levy purpose, we're estimating that new construction at $75 million to ensure that all of it is fully taxed. The average taxpayer can expect, on average, their school tax to increase approximately $42 annually, or about 2.3%. This includes the increase in the debt service levy. Without the debt service levy, it would be 2.1%, which was the Consumer Price Index for December 2017. There are three major state laws that govern the property taxation process. I will review each of them in detail. First is the truth in taxation. If the tax levy is estimated to increase more than 5%, then the district must publish a legal notice, as we commonly refer to as the black box ad, hold a public hearing, on the tax levy. In addition, the district must estimate the tax levy at least 20 days prior to adopting the actual levy, which is what we are doing here tonight. The school code outlines or defines the timeline for adopting the tax levy. This timeline listed here on the screen meets those requirements. Finally, the PTEL, or Property Tax Extension Limit Law, limits the annual increase in the tax levy to the growth of inflation, or Consumer Price Index, or 5% plus the tax on new construction. The CPIU for 2018 tax levy is based on the December 2017, which, as I mentioned, was 2.1%. As I said earlier, new construction is estimated at $75 million, but however, once that is finally known, which is in April, the county clerk will adjust the levy down to the actual amount. However, I must stress, they cannot adjust it up. Here are historical comparisons since 2010 for the total tax levy, including debt service. Note that the $84.3 million is more than is expected to be levied based on that higher new construction amount. So here is a summary of the 2018 tax levy determination based on $75 million of new growth with a reassessment factor of 2.5%. Note there that the educational fund is higher since the new construction is also higher. Now let's look at what I call the tax levy determination based on the budget, or the $50 million of new growth. Please note the following. The education is higher than last year since the district is working to restore the district's fund balance in this fund. O&M is higher as we have to build up this fund's fund balance since it needs to repay the $2 million interfund loan taken several years ago from the Ed Fund. The transportation levy is actually lower as its fund balance is currently at 32% of expenditures, and we're purposely levying down to bring down that fund balance. And that you can see that on page 37 of your budget books. Finally, working cash. This fund has been reduced to the minimum as we rebuild the education fund balance. However, we'll still continue to levy in that fund to keep that levy active. IMRF and Social Security, this fund's levy was reduced in 2017 because it began to have had a 35% fund balance of expenditure at that time. However, in 2018, we made the determination to pay off the early retirement incentive, which saved the district money, however, lowered this fund balance to 13% of expenditure. So at this point, that fund is in need of extra funding. The tort fund, this fund balance is currently at 105% of estimated expenditures, or of expenditures at the close of last fiscal year. Therefore, the levy has been adjusted down to reduce this fund's fund balance. And that you can be seen on page 50 of your budget book. The special education levy is a part of the education fund and is used to defray part of the cost of providing special education services within the district. And then finally, the debt service levy, which is unrestricted, or uncapped. This levy is set during the bond referendum process. The bond payments are levied for in advance, so as the bond payments increase, the future tax levy will also be increasing. And with that, I'd entertain questions on the 2018 tax levy determination.
So this example here that you have up is based on 50 million? Sorry.
Yes, 50 million. So that is what the levy is in the budget.
And what was it, it was 40 million last year? Is that what the actual was?
The actual, no, the actual was actually 50.2 million of new
Oh,
growth.
okay.
It was higher the year before though, correct?
Right, the year before is at 62 million.
It'll drop 10 million.
The special education levy, is there something specific that can only be spent on? I mean, if you're just rolling it into the education fund, what is the rationale for having a separate levy?
Well, well, rationale would be way back in the day, legislatures felt they should have a separate levy to fund special education. Over the years, that levy has never kept up. This is not uncommon that we're only levying $1.2 million. We spend about $5 million on special education. So, but it is the district's one of their sources of matching funds for special education.
So we need to have that fund available to get matches?
Well, there's a lot, when you're looking at your IDA grant and that other stuff, they don't really care. Local resources can be taxes from your general levy, it can be taxes from your special ed levy, as long as it's unrestricted local resources. So, you know, I don't know why, just historically, it's never kept up, and so, I mean, if I was to, I could move that rate to $5 million. You know, you won't see that in other districts either. It's just traditionally everybody's just kind of levied a lower amount in there.
So there's no benefits of increasing that?
Well, the only thing you want to make sure is that you did not ever levy over your expenditures, because because it is a restricted levy. It is for special education. So if you accidentally over levied, then you would have surplus funds you'd have to save for another year.
But we're only at 20%.
Yeah.
So if we approve, the notice goes out tomorrow?
Actually, because there is no, because we're well below the 5%, there's no notice period required, and there's no hearing required. Unless for some reason we adopted a levy higher than 5%, then we'd have to retroactively do that process. But since we're below that now, we don't have any of those requirements, other than you have to publicly discuss and pass a resolution determining that at least 20 days in advance, and that's what this resolution is doing right now.
I know we're doing this early for the TAWs. Do we have the ability to amend if need be up until the December date?
Wow, that's an interesting. You could do you could not amend, but you could do a supplemental levy if you had room within your caps. So if you had levied below the caps and the last day of, the first Tuesday in December had not passed, then you could do a supplemental levy. I don't know if there's any way to do anything past that date, but I believe it would be called a supplemental levy.
I was just thinking we normally get some sort of indication on the new property. Not that, I mean, I don't think it's going to be about that. So.
Well, if anybody was uncomfortable, or I'll just go back a slide.
No,
You
I'm
can
not.
see we're at 4.27. We could go to 100 million and still be well be underneath the 5%. I believe 75 million is a good number, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to.
We haven't renewed for 8 or 9 years at least, I think.
Any other questions of Brad regarding the tax determination? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2018-16, resolution making a determination of amounts of monies estimated to be necessary to be raised by taxation. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
Can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
I know we don't need to do the notice, the 20-day notice, but is there a reason that we couldn't do it?
I mean, you'd give a notice for what? I mean, if you're going to give a notice, you'd be given a notice to have a public hearing. I mean, there's not required by law to have a public hearing next meeting, but that would be the only reason to put a notice in the papers if you wanted to do a hearing.
All the information is available.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good point.
Okay. Rather than read that again, is there a
So
motion?
moved. Sorry.
Thank you. No, it's fine.
Second.
There was a motion and a second. Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, open the floor. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you, Brad, for the clarification. The final action item is the municipal advisor recommendation. I'd entertain a motion to accept the municipal advisor recommendation as presented in the package. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion, please.
All
Go
right.
ahead and open it up.
We put out an RFP, and we had 2 members of the board that helped on the selection committee, but we did receive...
Who are those
back-
members?
Huh?
Who are the members?
Oh, and the members we had Mr. Janik and Mr. Lucetti helped us with that. The district did put out an RFP, request for proposal. We did have back 5 responses in the end from PMA, Raymond James, Fair Financial, and Keen Financial Consulting. Looking and consulting on that, we did select to interview PMA and Raymond James. And then after discussion, I came to, we're recommending that we would move ahead with PMA from Naperville. And if there's anything the other 2 members would like to add in.
I mean, PMA was one of the entity that I recommended. So after sitting through the interview with them and seeing what they can do for us, thought we should go with them.
Yeah, I mean, we did also interview Raymond James. I thought PMA's presentation was a little bit better. Raymond James, they had just left William Blair, so I think there's a little more stability. They're still trying to build that business since they've moved to Raymond James. I think you have to look at in the recommendation. We do have the pricing here, and it's a little difficult to kind of figure out what the pricing is actually going to be because they base it on the size of the bond offering. So I really think, based on the resources and the experience, and given where our credit rating is, the ability to talk with the bond rating agencies, and also they have a lot of experience in choosing underwriters, and it's probably going to be a negotiated sale, so you want to be with one of the bigger firms, and that really the two biggest in this area, at least with the school districts, was PMA and Raymond James. The others had done a few deals, and given the size of what we have in front of us from potentially restructuring our debt, I just think we have to go with one of the larger firms.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, PMA they've done like the most in the area. So, I mean, this is something
As far as
that
school districts.
yeah, they're very comfortable with doing it. I think some of the other people would be looking to get it as a feather in their cap, whereas PMA, this is their bread and butter. This is what they do.
And the other thing is that PMA has been working with the district here, and they're a lot farther down the learning curve, which obviously came out because they're very familiar with the situations.
Any other questions?
Vote is over.
One thing real quick. Brad, just kind of give us a background and purpose as to why the board's doing this at this time. I know everybody kind of up here understands, but what would be the purpose?
Okay, so the reason behind going out for the request for proposal for the municipal advisor would be to provide the district with an independent view of what we should do, if anything, on restructuring our bonds, and also taking on the task of tracing down the actual bonds that can be traced back as closely as possible to the actual construction of Lincoln Way North High School. So the issuing bonds or restructuring bonds is really a two-part process. The first part would be is determining what the most appropriate structure would be and what that should look like. The second part of that would be actually going to the open market and issuing those bonds. The purpose for having an independent municipal advisor is you want that process to be independent of the second process, so that you're not having an underwriter or a bond seller, whatever you want to call them, that's really determining the layout of the district restructuring based on the best ability for them to sell and make profit. You want it to be done on what's best for the district and the taxpayers. So ensuring that those two processes are separate and independent is very critical. And we just don't have that expertise within the business office to do that kind of analysis and market trend understanding and all of that. And as Mr. Luchetti said, one of the real important processes that independent person will take on is most likely we'll go through what's considered a negotiated sale, given our bond rating, if we did a restructuring. And in that case, you need to have channels and network abilities open to you so that you can contact and work with multiple underwriters to end up getting a good secured price in the end. And so we definitely don't have that kind of networking within the business office. And so this is the need for bringing in an independent advisor to help with that process. If, just doing a restructuring, if that's where it turns out to be.
We'll just take that one step further. The timing reason why we're doing this now?
Absolutely. So the timing of why we're doing that now is, if you look at the district's outstanding debt of about $280 million, we have a rather large ramp up coming. We do have some callable bonds, callable meaning that you can automatically bring them back in at par without having to pay a premium if they are callable. So we have some of those that would be coming due at 2019 tax levy. So you'd be looking at the latest time you could affect those would be in December of 19 for the levy being collected in 20. So we'd want to have that analysis looked at. And the other thing is this municipal advisor can also help with our continued increasing of our bond rating. As they mentioned, PMA, out of courtesy, if you will, worked with us during our last Moody's rating agent call and was very helpful with preparing information because they've been through that, a bunch of times, and they know what those auditors or evaluators are looking for, and so that's another thing they can help us do. Moving the district's rating, bond rating, back into investment grade is the first step of this entire process. But we also need additional information as timing comes closer and closer.
So this gives us more than a year of ramp-up time as we look at that first opportunity with the bonds coming up at the end of 19.
Correct.
All right, good, great explanation. Anything else? Okay, with motions, we can open the call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Before we leave that topic, I'd like to publicly thank Chris and Aaron. I know you put in extra time to do that, and it was a difficult task, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right, our next financial presentation and discussion, the 2019 budget.
Okay, I do not have an actual presentation on the budget tonight. What we do have before you and in the board packet is kind of some Q&A that I got information, questions and answers that were distributed to me. And so I don't see a need to walk through those particularly, other than to say that the budget is finished, ready, and we continue. Any questions you would have, please feel free to fire them off to me. And we're looking forward to actually adopting the budget at the September 20th meeting. Is there anything else you'd like me to add, Dr.? Okay.
I like the fact that you did it this way to me, because I had similar questions, so rather than you get the same question 5 times, I was like, okay, somebody got it first, so it was great. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for ever asking questions. All right, and then same for the 5-year financial report.
Actually, I'm very excited.
All right.
It's fun to be back here. We didn't plan to do this until October, but we had such a good discussion last time. But whoops, and I forgot my. No, anyway. It's been very exciting to work through this and to kind of take some of your feedback, and that's what this whole process is about. So I guess that's why I'm so excited about it, because it's good to have that discussion and dialogue and come up with a better product. And that's what I feel like we have here tonight. I feel like we have a better product based on your feedback and all of that. So I want to go ahead and just jump into it and review what I put together. All right, I know you're as excited as I am. So with that, the first thing I want to discuss is the Consumer Price Index, or the CPIU for short. It's important that we understand the CPIU, since PTEL, the Property Tax Extension Limit Law we just discussed, uses the CPI from December of the prior year to control the increase in property taxes, which represents 72% or almost 3/4 of the district's revenue. The Consumer Price Index is a measure of the average change over time in the price paid by urban consumers for a set of goods referred to as a market basket. This market basket of goods was developed by 24,000, and I found this shocking when I read this, 24,000 household diaries kept and 48,000 quarterly interviews. And that's how they determine what should be in that basket of goods. That basket of goods includes 200 categories arranged into 8 major groupings. But in other words, what is the CPI? Simply stated, it's inflation. This chart represents the last 104 years of tracking the Consumer Price Index, or inflation or deflation, whichever happens to be the case. However, some sources indicated that the real tracking began in 1919. So, I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. The chart says 1914. As you know, or may not, I'm sorry, that the June over June inflation rate was 2.9%. Interesting enough, July over July, it's measured every 12 months, it's measured every month for a 12-month period, but it was also 2.9 for July of 2018. So what is driving the current 2.9 change in CPI? Well, this chart shows it. It's gasoline and fuel, which has increased 24.29% over from June of 2017 to June of 2018. Who else forecasts the CPI? Many different organizations forecast it, but the most notable ones are listed here on the screen. You have the Fed Open Market Committee, or what we refer to as Federal Reserve, typically. You have the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. You have the Wall Street Journal, which I've already talked about many times. You have the Federal Planning Bureau. You have Bloomberg's, and of course you have Kiplinger's. So, you should note though that the Federal Open Market Committee actually uses the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index, or PCE for short, which is also a predictor of inflation. So the Federal Open Market Committee stated on March 21st, 2018 that it forecasts the PCE inflation rate will average 1.9% in 2018, then increase to 2% in 2019, and remain stable at around 2% over 2020. However, as I mentioned, please note that the PEC since 1970 has averaged about 0.5% lower than the CPI. So in stating these terms in the CPI, their projections would have been 2.4 for 18, 2.5 for 19, and stable at 2.5 over 2020. The International Monetary Fund, they project the CPI at 2.5 for 18, 2.4 for 19, and 2.1% for 2020 and 2% thereafter. As you know, my favorite, the Wall Street Journal survey, which is a group of more than 60 economists on more than 10 major economic indicators on a month. They survey them on a monthly basis and then summarize their input into this graph, which on average predicts that December 2018 CPI at 2.54, December 19 CPI at 2.36, and December 2020 at 2.8. Now Bloomberg's, this chart does not include food and fuel, so their year-over-year number will be lower. But they're projecting that they'll be at about, the red line, which is the Federal Monetary Committee, see they're projecting at 2%, and then the goal of 2% for the PCE, or 2.5%, and you see Bloomberg here is a little lower on their CPI projection, just below 2. Finally, you have, next you have the Federal Planning Bureau, and they forecast the December 18 CPI at 2.17 and December at 1.27, which is quite a bit lower, December of 19, than anybody else. And finally, Kiplinger reports prices excluding food and energy, called the core, picked up to 2.4% increase in July, likely keeping the Federal Reserve on track to raise interest rates in September, which of course rising interest rates is an indicator of rising inflation. I was asked by the Board of Education last meeting, who projects the CPI besides the Wall Street? Well, you can see a lot of people do. The real question is, you have these economic experts in government and business, they all project the CPI, as I've demonstrated here, but the critical question that we should really ask ourselves is, Who is the best predictor of the unknown future? That being said, we'll move on. All right, a quick little review of the base model, or what we kind of view as our most likely. Here you have it, CPI driving the 72% of our revenue increase. So we've got in there 2.51, 2.34, 2.25, and 2.1. Kind of in line with some of that data we've seen. Some of it says those numbers could be a little high, but somewhat in line. Then we have our new growth. You know, we had 52 million last year, 62.6 the year before. We've got it at 50 million going out into the future, which generates about $1 million of new tax revenue to the district, okay? Based on those assumptions, you can see here that this red line represents our policy 420. You can see we're below that as the district continues to strengthen its financial position over the next 5 years. This is our estimated fund balances. You can see we're moving ahead with an estimated $20.5 million of estimated surplus, building that fund balance up to 31 million for our operating funds. These are just the operating funds. And there's our famous little graph. You can see we could be down as low by 2024 to only needing about 2.4 million in tax anticipation warrants. So just about out of the business of borrowing money. Here is our timeline and goal. Remember, goal is we're going to make at least 3% increase in operating surplus, bringing our fund balance by 2026 to 33%. Now let's take a look at that what if worst case scenario. All right, for this scenario, we said no changes in expenditures. However, for revenue, we've made changes to the CPI, which I'll show you. We've also, in this model, since it became a known thing, we did go ahead and update the evidence-based funding, which was just released by ISB. And then we said we're going to prorate it at 93%. We did not model a pension shift. And the reason why is because having a pension shift and a tax freeze, which I will show you, is probably unlikely. We think that most likely some kind of a tax freeze would be the most likely if we had something coming. So we've modeled that tax freeze in here. The way we did that is the way the legislature was proposed last time it was on the table, and that was just replacing in PTEL law with a 5 with a 0. So we put that in here. So for 19 and 20, the reason why is 2018 tax levy. Every district's in the process of getting that ready. Has to be filed by the last Tuesday, or first Tuesday in December. I don't see the legislature pulling something off before that. So I did go ahead and leave the 18 levy in. And then you see flat 2 years of property tax freeze. Then coming off of the property tax freeze, I looked at an economic slump and only having a 1% inflation during that time. Then we took a look at new property growth. For new property growth, as you know, property taxes are taxed 1 year in arrears, i.e. that is homes built in 2017 are reported as new growth and levied in 2018. Therefore, the earliest that new growth could show a slowdown could reasonably appear in 2020. So I left the 17, or the 17s is known. I left the 18 at 50. I left 19 and 50 because we're already most of the way through 18 and we know the economy's going good, so we don't see a slowdown. So the soonest we think we could see a slowdown would be in 20. So in that case, we took the lowest point in the last 13 years, which was 36.5 million. That's our lowest point in the last 13 years. Now, putting all those assumptions through the 5 cast, you can see here, so of course no change in 19 because that's our budget number. Our first projection number is 20. Okay, so we're down there. Then we're down even more in 21, and then finally we'll be running a deficit by 22, a larger deficit by 23, and then a $1.2 million deficit by 24. Obviously, well below the surplus of 3% policy 420. What's that do to our fund balance? Well, fund balance would begin to shrink, and the financial stability process would come to a halt. And as you can see here, we would no longer be even getting close to restoring our fund balance back to that goal of 33% unless the district stepped in and did make expenditure reductions. Well, let's talk about what we'd have to do to restore back. All right, if this became our worst case scenario, in order, or just to summarize, remember, policy 420 says the district will run an operating surplus of at least 3% for a fiscal year. In order to make that goal listed here, here's the goals that the board has set, so 3, 9, that's where we want to be. And in order to make those goals, here's the amount of reduction we would have to have. We'd have to have $728,000 in the first year, and you can read the numbers. This represents what percent of the budget? So 0.8%, 1.6%, these others less than 1% of the budget. Very manageable, very doable. What's it really mean to summarize? The district would need to make an estimated $4.3 million in expenditures to reduce and stay on track of our fiscal or financial recovery goal of 420. In the short term, these reductions would first come from capital expenditures and other non-salary and benefit-related items. However, since 73% of our operating expenditures are related to salaries and benefits, if this did become a reality, the long-term reductions would have to impact staff compensation. So, with those reductions made, we ran it through the model, and you can see then we began to achieve our 3%, above our 3% surplus. It's important that by fiscal 2024, our estimated fund balance would be 26.8%, or right at that required level of the 27% where we said we'd be at. Here is our graph. You can see the difference though. Even though we'd be just making those 3% surpluses, we are still at 5.4, and that other number is 2.4. So it would have an impact, but yet we would still be on track to make that financial goal. And with that, I would then entertain questions or feedbacks that we'd have on that worst case scenario.
So we're sticking with the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah. In the worst case scenario, you suggested to staff with benefit reductions, long-term solution. But if the new growth is only at 36.5, that's a possibility that there's also less students, less population, so a long-term solution.
Right, it also could include
right,
staffing because of enrollment reduction.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I thought that was interesting, and I think the challenge then there is, like in any business, this doesn't happen all at once. There's not a shock analysis here, but if we did start to see these storm clouds roll in,
Right.
you know what the target numbers are, and you can start to say, yeah, let's not do that, or let's do this instead.
Exactly.
So I think that's what we were driving for here, was everything always seemed to be going northeast, and was going to work out no matter what. And you find a scenario that shows a recessionary trend, shows rates going up, and gives you the opportunity to say, if I've got to cut $1.4 million out of this budget, I can start thinking about that now, similar to what we're doing with the bond restructuring, 3 years ahead of time, rather than 3 weeks before it happens.
Right.
So.
No, this was a good exercise for us to sit down, and once Brad had put in the worst case scenario, then to go back through and say, okay, what percentage of the budget would we have to reduce to get to that number? So I thought it was very, very beneficial for us to look at it through that lens.
That's what I was.
Yes, that's what
Yes,
yeah.
that was a very, very beneficial exercise that we sat down and went through. It was very eye-opening and said, okay, based on all these tough situations, which, hey, man, you know, look at that chart. Back in the day, we hit some of these. So, you know, what would that really mean for us?
The concept of contingency planning just comes into play, that's all. I think that's might have been where we look in the past, we weren't prepared for that. That's all. Thank you. Any other questions?
Very good.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you.
We appreciate your enthusiasm. All right, next are our informational items. Lincoln Way Special Education District 843. Ron?
I attended that meeting, nothing new to report to the board.
Okay, great. FOIA requests.
FOIA requests are included in your backup materials.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the FOIA requests? If not, next is audit status.
Kelly's going to give a quick update on where we're at with our annual audit.
So quick update, the auditors were out the weeks of August 6th and 13th. This was my third audit with the district, and I would say by far this has been, it was the smoothest audit that we've had so far. They were very pleased with how prepared we were when they came. I feel like they got through everything really quickly. Our bookkeeping staff did a fantastic job of pulling selections when they asked for them. All the requests were kind of funneled through me, and then I, divvied them out to the staff to help me pull some of their requests, and they did an excellent job with that. We had, on our last day of field work, we sat down with them and just had a very brief meeting, just basically a status meeting to talk about where we were at. They got through pretty much the majority of their field work during those 2 weeks. They have a few outstanding items and are completing their review. Should have every outstanding item. It's not that many to them by the end of next week. They did indicate though that barring anything that comes up during their review, and it's been a couple weeks since they've been out now, and I have not heard anything else that's come up in their review, that there will be no new management comments this year. We do have those couple remaining ones that we still need to kind of figure out, and hopefully will get resolved during fiscal year 19, but nothing new to report for this year.
And Kelly, in the 3 years we've had a complete turnover of the business office, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Good work.
couple positions have been a couple times through, but yes.
So we have a solid team out there.
Yeah, we have a really good team.
When would we expect their presentation at this one?
October. Yes, we're on track to get the report issued by the October 15th deadline. The AFR issued by the October 15th deadline is the deadline.
Any other questions? Thank you for the update, Kelly.
Thank you.
Next is building and ground report.
The buildings and grounds report are in your backup materials if anyone has any questions.
Any questions regarding the building and ground report?
It's been very thorough. Good job by you.
The reason there's no questions is because it is a good report. It is a very good report. It is. Community relations report.
Price sheet is also included in your backup materials for your review.
Asset of the month.
Asset of the month for September, commitment to learning, motivation, and goal setting. Students are motivated to do well in school. At home, talk with your children about school and learning and make learning a family affair. At school, relate lesson content and curricula to real-life situations and issues. And in the community, offer enjoyable, meaningful, intellectually challenging trips, lectures. That's the asset for September.
All right, great, thank you. Legislative report.
Nothing to report at this time.
Superintendent's report.
What we included in the superintendent's report is just a presentation schedule. Obviously, this could change as different topics become relevant throughout the school year, or if we anticipate longer meetings, but this is what we have set in place. If there's anything else the board would like to see, get that to me, but this is kind of the plan with DC's principals, special education report listed in there, but that's our plan for the upcoming school year.
All right, other district business? None? Any board comments? Any member comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, we do have correspondence.
I'm sorry.
So, sorry, the very last one. So correspondence from the VFW, State of Illinois. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Lieutenant Colonel George Ramey and Lincoln Central Air Force Junior ROTC for presenting the colors during their fall council administrative meeting in Joliet over the past weekend in August. So they were able to go out and do that. So this is a letter from the state commander. I thought I would include that in the correspondence.
Very good. I apologize for the second. It's very nice recognition there for them. All right, now I'll entertain a motion the board go into closed session for the following reasons: appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees, establish sale or lease price of real estate, consider sale or purchase of securities, investments, or investment contracts, student-related matters, litigation, and meetings between internal and external auditors, audit committees, finance committees, and their equivalents. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second.
I'm sorry. The vote is open.
We're not anticipating any action
The vote is unanimous.
after closed session.